Hi, and welcome back to another video from the Daily Uplift Official. Please go ahead, like and subscribe to the video and hit that notification button so you'll be notified when a new video drops. Today, I want to talk about trauma responses you thought were personal traits. Let's get started. What if I told you some of the things you call personal traits are actually survival responses? What if being overly independent, constantly apologizing, struggling to trust people, overthinking everything, shutting down emotionally, or needing constant reassurance isn't just who you are? What if those behaviors were built from pain? Because a lot of people are walking around thinking, this is just my personality, when really it's trauma adapting to survival, or trauma adapting to survive. And the dangerous part is this: when trauma disguises itself as personality, you stop questioning the behavior, you normalize it. You build your identity around it. You start believing this is just me. But healing begins the moment you realize some of the behaviors protecting you are also hurting you. And tonight we're going to talk about the trauma responses you thought were personal traits, because understanding yourself could change your entire life. Most trauma responses don't look like or don't look dramatic from the outside. Sometimes trauma doesn't scream. Sometimes trauma adapts quietly. It becomes habit, patterns, defense mechanisms, relationship behaviors, ways of thinking. And over time, you stop seeing them as wounds. You start calling them personality. But survival mode was never supposed to become your personal identity. A lot of people pride themselves on being hyper independent. I don't need anybody. I'll handle it myself. I'm used to doing everything alone. And yes, independence can be healthy, but hyper independence is often trauma, because somewhere along the line you learned people were unreliable. You learned vulnerability felt unsafe. You learned asking for help led to disappointment. So your mind adapted. Depend on nobody. Now you struggle receiving support. You push people away emotionally. You carry everything alone. You feel uncomfortable being cared for, and deep down, exhaustion has become normal. That's not always strength. Sometimes that's survival. Strong people still deserve support. Some of you think overthinking is just part of your personality, but many times overthinking develops from unpredictability. When life becomes emotionally unstable, your brain starts trying to protect or predict every possible outcome to avoid pain. So now you analyze everything: tone changes, text messages, facial expressions, silence, energy shifts. Your mind stay alert because at some point being unprepared emotionally hurts you. So overthinking becomes protection. The problem is eventually it steals your peace. You stop living in the present. You become trapped in imagined scenarios, fear, anxiety, and emotional exhaustion, and people around you may call you dramatic. Without realizing, your nervous system learned survival through hyper awareness. No, sometimes you were taught emotions were unstable. Maybe every time you cried, you were ignored. Maybe vulnerability was mocked. Maybe expressing feelings led to punishment, criticism, or rejection. So eventually your emotions got buried. Now people say you're emotionally unavailable. But what they don't see is the wound underneath it. You learned emotional suppression before emotional safety. So now shutting down feels normal. Avoiding vulnerability feels safer than risking rejection. And some of you became emotional disconnected. You struggle identifying your own feelings. Let me say that again. And some of you become so emotionally disconnected, you struggle identifying your own feelings. Not because you're cold, because survival taught you numbness. People pleasing is one of the most normalized trauma responses in the world. You call yourself nice, easygoing, selfless, always being there for others. But underneath that behavior is often fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of abandonment, fear of disappointing people. So you learn to keep everybody happy, even when it costs you your own peace. You say yes when you mean no. You apologize for things that aren't even your fault. You overextended yourself emotionally. You neglect your own needs to avoid losing people. And eventually you become emotionally drained, trying to earn love you should never have had to earn. Real love doesn't require self abandonment. Some of you don't naturally distrust people. You were taught distrust through betrayal, broken promises, lies, inconsistency, emotional abandonment. And now your nervous system expects disappointment. So you struggle relaxing in healthy relationships. You wait for people to leave. You question intentions. You prepare for heartbreak before anything even goes wrong. And because pain once caught you off guard, your mind now tries to protect you by staying emotionally guarded. But constant self-protection eventually becomes isolation. Not everybody is your enemy, but trauma convinces you safety is dangerous. Some of you become the strong one because you had no other choice. You had to survive emotionally. You had to mature early. You had to carry responsibilities nobody should have placed on you. So now everyone admires your strength while nobody notices how tired you are. Strong people get ignored emotionally too. People assume they're fine, but deep down you're exhausted from constantly carrying everyone else while nobody checks on you. And sometimes being the strong one is really just a trauma response built from never feeling safe enough to fall apart. If you would, go ahead and hit that like button. So you tell yourself, I just like being alone. But maybe isolation became protection because closeness once led to pain. Maybe every time you trusted someone, you got hurt. So now your mind associates connecting with danger. You pull away when people get too close. You sabotage relationships. You emotionally detach quickly. You leave before you can be left. And what feels like independence may actually be fear of vulnerability. Because if nobody gets close, nobody can hurt you. At least that's what trauma tells you. Some people think anxiety is simply part of their personality, but unresolved trauma often keeps the nervous system stuck in alert mode. Your body stays prepared for danger even when danger is gone. So relaxing feels unnatural. Peace feels unfamiliar. Your mind consistently searches for problems, and people around you may not understand why you struggle calming down emotionally. But trauma changes the body too, not just the mind. And healing isn't just about positive thinking, it's about teaching your nervous system that safety is possible again. This is why healing matters so much because unresolved trauma slowly shapes identity. You stop saying, I experience pain, and start saying, this is just who I am. But hear me closely. Your trauma responses are not your identity. They are adaptations, and adaptations can heal. You're not permanently broken. You are responding from wounds that learned survival before safety. And once you become aware of those patterns, you can change them. This is important. Healing can feel uncomfortable because survival patterns become unfamiliar. Setting boundaries feels wrong at first. Rest feels unfamiliar. Trust feels scary. Vulnerability feels risky. Peace feels strange because your nervous system became used to chaos. But discomfort does not always mean something is bad. Sometimes it means you're finally growing beyond survival mode. Maybe this video helped you recognize parts of yourself you never understood before. Maybe you finally realized, I'm not crazy. I'm not weak. I'm not just difficult. Maybe some of your behaviors came from pain that never fully healed. And while trauma may explain your patterns, healing is still your responsibility. Not shame, not self hatred, healing. Because you deserve more than survival. You deserve peace, healthy relationships, emotional safety, rest, joy, freedom. And healing starts when you stop identifying with every survival mechanism trauma created. You're not just your wounds. You are who you become when healing finally begins. If this video spoke to you, remember this. Some of the behaviors you thought were personal traits were actually protection mechanisms built from pain. But awareness changes everything. Once you understand the wound, you can begin healing the response. Take your healing seriously. Give yourself grace and stop confusing survival mode with your true identity. You can begin healing the response. Take your healing seriously, give yourself grace, and stop confusing survival mode with your true identity. You are not beyond healing. Your story does not end with trauma. Thanks again for visiting the Daily Uplift Official. I'll see you in the next video.